Hello, welcome back to the Saga the Clone Saga, aka the Clone Zone. This is the podcast presented by the students of S.H.I.E.L.D., in which we read through the entirety of the 1990s infamous Clone Saga, and now we're going beyond to read some more crap. I'm Matt.
I'm Billy.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Vincent. And today, it's minimally connected to the Clone Saga. At least the Gathering of Five and the final chapter were like sort of resolving some plot threads and stuff. There's really like one reference here, but I just thought since we finished the Spider-Man Volume 1 and the entire, you could say the original era of Spider-Man, we might as well just do this one other episode and just have a quick peek at this relaunch of Spider-Man, even though it's not entirely like, it's pretty much the exact same creative team from last episode.
I mean, there are some clones in here.
Well, sort of. And
Yeah.
there is one major reference, but we'll get to that.
Right.
First, our sponsor is a surprise because we're going to do a live unboxing. I have two boxes here. I'm pretty sure I know what's in them, but we're going to open them. And I'm really hoping something that's not included will be like those like packing peanuts. Because those are the worst, and they get everywhere.
Why? It's just a tasty snack.
Well, I'll ship you some.
I hear that unboxing videos are the new craze on YouTube, so I'm sure this will get us a whole nother view.
Oh, did you hear that like 6 years ago?
Yeah. No, what? Yeah.
Money shot. That didn't work. All right, what do we have in here?
That's a great question, Vince.
Actually, I'm going to open both the boxes, and then I'll show what's in the box.
Okay.
Because they're the same thing.
This is the longest sponsor segment.
Box number 2. Shout out to the United States Postal Service. They're always very timely, very helpful if you need any help. It's really a great service. I'm very glad that my tax dollars go there.
They send things from point A to point B. If you're sending it to the wrong point B, you can go to the post office and pick it up. I'm sure Mike can attest to that.
What kind of idiot would send a package to their apartment they don't live in?
I don't know. Certainly no one on this podcast.
Money shot.
That didn't work either.
I do want to say, Vince, welcome back to the show. Your streak ended.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. I was not on last episode.
Well, you were. Matt said that you were Vince.
Oh.
Yeah, I did say I was Vince.
So now
I did a really bad impression of you. It didn't work.
We have these two things inside of them.
Well, now it's an ASMR video.
We're hitting all the boxes. We're going to be number 1 trending on the YouTube. Maybe number 2 after Fallon. Is Fallon still on YouTube? I don't know.
Oh god, I hope he is done with it soon because
This is taking so fucking long.
Now we've got some bubble wrap.
Oh my god.
So, okay, good. Some bubble wrap. Now let's spend 15 minutes popping all of it.
You better tag this. You better tag this video as unboxing.
Oh.
ASMR.
Ah.
Oh. Oh, that's a good crunch.
We have to vamp as much as we can here because we only have like 10 minutes worth of content with these issues. So we gotta space this out.
We gotta get the video to over 10 minutes for ad money.
That's exactly right. All that ad revenue we get from this podcast.
What ad money?
No, because we're totally partnered. This channel.
Today's sponsor is
with our copyright
Fox.
claims.
Now
Have you seen those Harrisburg trip videos? We got copyrighted content all over those.
So this is a big stack of issues. What could it be? It's
13 pounds of Firestorm.
Everyone's favorite Marvel character, Rom the Space Knight.
Oh my god, you actually bought it.
Just a stack of ROM single issues. What? Is the next custom buy project?
Eventually, this is 75 issues and 4 annuals of ROM.
God,
Oh fuck!
I'm real glad we sat through 5 minutes of opening boxes so you could show us 80 issues of ROM.
Jesus.
Fuck. A lot of it drawn by 2 people. Almost all of it drawn by 2 people strongly associated with Spider-Man. You have Sal Buscema, and then you have Steve Ditko.
I did not know Ditko worked on ROM.
Oh my god.
I had a special assist by a very, very old co-host of the show. Our friend Nick DePalma tried to outbid me for a little bit, and then he finally gave up. Because
Can you tell us what the final price was?
it wasn't that high. I turned my phone.
I'm more curious about what Nick wanted 80 issues of ROM for. He didn't read comics.
Well, what did he want X-Men Fatal Attractions for? Okay, so it's
it wasn't just Fatal Attractions that he bought.
It was like 4.
He bought 3 Titanic X-Men hardcovers and did not want them because I showed mild interest once.
That's amazing.
It was $180 out of his pocket, not mine.
So that was 75 issues, 4 annuals from like from the 80s, and I paid. It was expensive shipping for some reason, but before shipping, it was $56.
That's not bad.
Not bad at all. I was like really surprised that I got it, and like especially with Nick annoyingly bumping up the price $1 or whatever he technically caught.
Was Nick actually like invested in this, or did he just want to get it so you couldn't?
No, he wasn't even like really trying to get it. I was just like playing Xbox, and he was like, and I was like, I'm gonna buy this ROM set. And he just searched for all the ROM sets. So now let's get into our topic for today. We have what is usually referred to as the next chapter. And here, as far as other poor purchasing decisions, is the next chapter, Volume 1, which these issues are collected in.
Yeah.
Actually, the annual is not in this volume. It's in a later volume, which I also have. I forgot to bring all 3 of them over here. And on the cover, it's slightly edited for this, but the cover of this trade is basically the cover of the first issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the art here is by John Byrne.
Not a great cover.
Yeah, this Amazing Spider-Man #1 cover is kind of pretty stupid.
Spider-Man's eyes are askew, and it doesn't look right.
Well, it's not even
that being said, I can think off the top of my head of 2 worse Amazing Spider-Man #1 covers.
Oh, who is the artist on those?
Well, the one is Ramos.
Wait, are you talking about Volume 3? Oh, and yeah, okay. So
And the one that Alex Ross did.
Yeah.
I don't know what volume that is.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just boring. It's like this weird yellow background. I think Spider-Man actually looks pretty decent. But then it's weird yellow background, Spidey posing, Scorpion posing, and then floating heads.
Yeah.
Always a great.
I mentioned it to you guys off the show, but a Scorpion costume that we've only ever seen once, but somehow was popular enough to make it into the Spider-Man PS1 game and the first movie tie-in game for the Raimi movie.
And therefore, we did not only see it once.
Yeah, well, in comics, we only saw it once.
But this is a big deal. If you were like a teenager at this time or something, you could buy Amazing Spider-Man #1, which is a big deal.
And now,
again, I've got like 4 of those at my home. So,
yeah, how many times in our life have we been able to do it now?
How many times in the past 3 years?
Yeah, but this was the first time in like 30, almost 40 years. Wait, 62 to 99?
Yeah.
63?
And so, as I said, this is written and drawn by John Byrne, but Howard Mackie is helping somehow on writing. I'm not sure if that means Byrne is plotting and Mackie scripting. That could be the case, but there are certain weird things about the script which makes me think maybe an even older man is writing it, and specifically an old weird man like John Byrne. So we open with Human Torch leaving a message in the sky for Spider-Man because he's been missing since the final chapter. And he's not just by himself, he's with the whole classic Fantastic Four, with Reed, Sue, and Ben. They're in the Fantastic Car. And Johnny makes a quick reference to Onslaught. Well, Heroes Reborn / Onslaught. And so for a while, that Fantastic Four has been a mess. But at this point,
all of Marvel, honestly.
Yeah, at this point, I believe Fantastic Four should be written at this point by Chris Claremont and drawn by Salvador Larroca. And Marvel will finally collect part of that very soon.
Cool.
Yep. And Pete, we see Pete. He's like literally watching Johnny put a message in the sky. He's retired from Spider-Man because he can't take the stress, so he's retired. And you guys can quickly fill in. He had an Amazing Spider-Man 50 moment at the end of final chapter, right?
Yes, he did.
Here's my question, though. MJ and Peter keep referring it to as like a promise that Peter brought up to MJ, kind of like an ultimatum thing. That's not how it went down at all.
Right. It's framed, like you said, it's framed like he promised it specifically to MJ. When what really happened is he just got tired of taking the heat.
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with her at all. And
MJ
now
was more shocked with the decision than anything.
Right. And now we're moving into, well, it's MJ's fault.
Yeah.
Everything's MJ's fault.
Happened between the pages. And his wife MJ is there, though. Well, not physically there. And Aunt May is living with them. They're in some penthouse apartment in New York. And we open with Aunt May making him a sandwich.
Yeah, you know what's great? I read the first line of Aunt May's dialogue. I thought, wow, I wish he stayed dead.
Honestly, me too.
I did not miss this.
Well, you're just one of those teenagers that likes the rap music today.
Oh yeah, that's where I know this is written by John Byrne.
Half of
he starts
her
making fun of
shit
rap.
is just like so unbearable. Like it's just so like, oh, I'm gonna complain about this because it's new and I'm supposed to be an old woman. And then
Right.
another significant part of her dialogue is, oh, Peter, you're so scrawny. Like, you're such a scrawny piece of shit. That's basically what she just keeps telling him, like, every other panel.
Right. Is this really the rich character we wanted to bring back in the final chapter? Is this what we were going for?
See,
What's funny, though, is that the way Peter's drawn is he's just a slightly more slimmed down version of John Byrne's Clark Kent.
See, the thing is that she keeps calling him scrawny, but he's still rather muscular. Like,
Yeah.
he still has defined arm and chest muscles through his shirt.
Yes.
So I don't know how you could possibly call him scrawny.
Like in this panel where Aunt May's going to the fridge and Pete's standing there and his chest is huge.
It goes out past his nose. Like,
No,
I'm
telling you, go look at Man of Steel #1 and the way he draws Clark, because they're both in that first issue. They're both wearing black T-shirts and brown slacks. It's the same body type, just slimmed down very slightly. It's really funny.
Also, in this first kitchen panel, it's at an angle where for a second I was like, "Oh no, there's going to be a wheat cakes joke," but it's a sandwich.
I am very. If there was a wheat cake joke, I probably would have quit the entire podcast.
You know it's coming up. Like if we had kept reading this, you know it's coming up in the next few issues.
No, it has to. Whatever. I'm so sick of the wheat cakes thing. I don't think it's a funny callback.
It's only funny when it's the Frank Cho covers.
Okay, yeah.
Do it in the comic.
Fine. Yeah.
And MJ, she's not here at the moment. She's overseas modeling, and she'll be gone a little bit longer. She's got another gig. And this is where we start getting this thing where she has a deal with Peter about not wearing the costume. And every time it comes up, it is written like this thing where Pete really doesn't want it. Even though the issues start out with him being like, I'm done. I retired. It's too stressful.
Yeah.
Either you choose one or the other because they don't really fit together.
Well, I mean, and I don't know, I wasn't there, but I imagine this is really it's the creative team going, don't you hate MJ?
Yeah.
Don't you want to get rid of MJ?
It
Such
makes
a
me
naggy bitch.
Yeah, it makes me upset though because MJ had nothing to do with his decision to retire.
No.
And I
Absolutely
feel like
nothing.
they could have done something with it, and then they just ruined it.
Yep.
And now we get more of the floating head guest stars.
Well, I guess a last question on John Burns. How do we feel about John Burns, MJ, in this issue?
I mean, I don't think he's any worse than anyone else.
She needs to consume just one piece of food.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fine, but especially in this one panel where she's overseas or whatever, the way John Byrne is drawing her and poses her, it actually reminds me sort of the kind of Wildstorm kind of house style of a J. Scott Campbell or Brett Booth or Jim Lee, which is weird coming from John Byrne.
You can see her ribcage.
Also, her head is disproportionate to her body, and it throws me off.
Her head is weird.
Yeah, I mean, this is 1999. John Byrne, no longer the greatest artist in the industry. It's hard to say exactly what happened. Some of it people debate on who's inking him, and a lot of people criticize when he inks himself, such as on his Wonder Woman run. But he's getting inked by Scott Hanna here, who's usually a pretty great inker. I don't know, something happened.
Well, I mean, it's clearly not the Byrne that we know from Uncanny X-Men. It's nowhere close to that.
I'd say his faces are still solid though here.
I think they're mostly fine, except for MJ's.
They're a little off.
Yeah, and also, I mean, when Spider-Man is actually in costume, which is more complicated, and we'll get to in a second, Spider-Man looks decent to me.
Sure.
It's a little retro, but that's what they're going for.
I think he kind of draws the eyes too far apart, but whatever.
So Daredevil is down on the street beating up someone, and he's noticing that there's been more crime on the streets in Spider-Man's absence. And I mean, the idea is all these superheroes are in New York. So New York has to have terrible crime if there weren't superheroes. And there are a shitload of superheroes here. And so it's hard to tell exactly the ecosystem of how much Spider-Man contributes versus how much Daredevil contributes, what all of their stomping ground geographies are and how much they overlap. It's kind of interesting to have that moment from Daredevil. There's also Daredevil is able to read the fire message in the sky with his senses powers, which I think is kind of weird.
It's a little bit of a stretch, I'd say.
Yeah, it's hundreds of feet up in the sky, this dissipating fire. But
yeah,
and then we get the Avengers,
and they do the same thing, and they also go, Spider-Man's missing, and that's bad.
Yeah,
but Cap's got his hologram shield, guys.
Yes, this is the Kurt Busiek, George Perez era Avengers.
I noticed that.
Cap has a hologram shield from the Mark Waid run, and Wanda is in her magnificent George Perez costume.
It's something.
We get two people from one of our favorite teams have now upgraded to the Avengers. We have Justice and Firestar leveling up. And we also have Thor and Vision are there, and Iron Man. Iron Man's in his Sean Chen Heroes Return armor.
Okay,
I like that armor.
I like straight up didn't even realize that Firestar was there.
Yeah, well,
He stands in
He's
the
like the
background.
background of one panel.
Two
Yeah.
panels.
and
Oh,
even
yeah,
like
she's the other one. I thought it was
I
she just
think-
moved along.
even though you only see like a third of her body, I think her costume is off. Well, I think the colorist slightly screwed up. But this Avengers scene ends with Cap smacking down the Daily Bugle, and he's mad about the front page. And it's like kind of implied, like, oh, the Avengers, we got to do something about this. And like, I don't know what is Captain America going to storm into Jonah's office
They're gonna avenge the headlines.
and
They're
be
gonna
like, this
burn
is,
down the bugle.
this is not how we did it in the 1930s. But I'm not certain if that comes up in the next issue of Amazing Spider-Man because the Avengers don't come back in our reading. But we do cut to the Daily Bugle, and J. Jonah Jameson is just going crazy with Spider-Man missing. Just really showing off his lack of journalistic integrity.
Yeah, what do you think of this portrayal of Jonah specifically in this issue?
Okay, it's more so than ever before. Is it like the J.K. Simmons meme of "Get me pictures of Spider-Man"?
It just fucking sucks.
I think that Jonah can be a difficult character to nail down, which sounds weird considering he's basically a one-trick pony. But like, I think in this issue, they've leaned so far into Jonah hates Spider-Man that it's become ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
it was ridiculous in the last episode, though.
I mean, like where we're at right now is that no, sure, yeah, it's the same thing last episode, but right now it's like Spider-Man has been seen in months, and Jonah refuses anything from Pete because he wants pictures of Spider-Man,
Right.
who for all he knows is dead.
I
Like
think
that's not how you run a newspaper. Not how
No,
you run
wait, no.
any
He knows
business.
he's not dead because he saw him walk away. He's just not. He's retired or somewhere else.
it would be way more interesting if it was almost like Joker going sane or something like that, where Jonah just like totally mellows the fuck out when Spider-Man is suddenly like completely out of the picture.
I think that'd be great.
So, but he wants Pete to get pictures of Spider-Man somehow, and he refuses to pay him for anything else. And then we have the Scorpion tearing up the streets of New York City. And he last appeared in Spider-Man Unlimited 22, which we thankfully did not have to read. And Unlimited 22 was the final issue of that series.
Oh,
So
thank God it ended.
imagine if we had to read all 22. I don't remember exactly how far we got into it. And in this issue, Scorpion, he has a souped-up costume and powers. It looks pretty dumb, and we have a backup later, which sort of not really explains how he got it. But how do you guys feel about this costume?
I hate. It's terrible.
It's so over-designed. It's ridiculous.
It's too armory. I don't know why he doesn't have a mask. His face is exposed, so you can just punch him in the face and the fight's over.
Now, like to be fair, I'm not a fan of most Scorpion costumes. Like even the original is stupid, but this sucks.
Yeah, that's what I was actually thinking is like, I think it's really hard to update the Scorpion
Yeah.
because it was one of the Ditko designs where it is like bulky and clunky, and it fits in that art style. But as soon as you start getting less cartoony, and even John Byrne, which is, he is somewhat descended from that Silver Age style, like it just doesn't work when you start getting too detailed.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought the PS4 game design was fine.
I'm not familiar with it because I haven't played that game yet.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar, but I think isn't that one even like more techy?
It's more techy, but it's slimmer than this one though. It's
Yeah.
not bulky.
Well, that's the thing with me is like I don't want these villains' costumes to look like bulky and weird. but I also don't want them to be like too updated where they're like these actual serious technological like suits.
Right.
Well, I mean, spoilers for the game. It is also said that Doc Ock gives all the villains like upgraded costumes, though. So
Yeah, but like that's also kind of like my conundrum with how they adapted or how one would adapt the Vulture to live action, because it's like if you 100% adapted the original look, yeah, it's really wacky. But also, do you necessarily need to give him like this weird gas mask and like these metal wings?
it's not a gas mask. It's
Oh man, this is a debate.
because he's
This is a
flying.
debate. This is a debate that can pick up the rest of the episode.
Yeah,
But
that-
instead of that,
it's one of the few good things about Homecoming is that suit.
I don't know about that. And then there's this moment, there's this scene where like it's not really clear. I wasn't clear what they were trying to do here. He is out with another photographer, which I don't know if this is supposed to be someone we know or if this is a new character, which I don't think gets named.
I believe it's a new character. It says that she's a rookie reporter for the Bugle.
No, I think she refers to the Peter Parker.
Oh, really? I read it as she was the rookie reporter.
I think she like transferred from another paper or something. I'm not sure because, but also, is she
Oh,
supposed
it's
to?
Betty.
Well, is that Betty? Because Betty does come later.
It is. She's wearing the same clothes that she was wearing in the Bugle.
So who is the rookie
Oh my
reporter?
god!
Who is the rookie that's running away?
Uh,
No one that matters at all. Because I thought the setup was, all right, well, whoever this woman is refers to Peter as the rookie that's running away, and then it's a joke on us because there's a villain, so Pete has to run away to dress up as Spider-Man, but everyone thinks he's a little bitch, and then of course, and then the double twist is obvious is that it's not Peter as Spider-Man. But I mean, exactly, I don't really know what.
oh, okay. The photographer who's running away is nobody because Pete didn't go.
So Pete's not here at all. It's really weird.
It's Betty and a no name photographer. That's what it is.
Yeah, but it totally caught me off guard because all you see is just this man running away, and it's not clear necessarily that Pete's not there. And so I just assumed that it was Pete for that classic setup of Clark Kent / Peter Parker has to run away to get in costume.
Right.
But the Scorpion is going around. He's beating up cops and destroying shit. And then Spider-Man comes through. It's like, oh shit, Pete's breaking that promise he made to MJ. And there's an awkward footnote during this fight to refer back to when Spider-Man last held up a building, which Scorpion heard about, which happened in the final chapter. I did not read the final 2 issues or so. How was that building holding up scene?
It was. We had mixed opinions on it.
It's not great, but there's some cool moments, as I think is what we came to the conclusion of.
Basically, there's this bit where Pete goes through all of his web cartridges, and you see all the web cartridges falling around near his feet, and that was really cool.
That's pretty cool.
That's probably about it.
So
and then that building's fucked after an hour, but yeah.
Yeah.
This Spider-Man doesn't use any webbing in our entire reading, I believe, and they get squashed by the Scorpion.
Just flattened.
Yep. And cut to Pete. He's interviewing at Tricorp Research. He's introduced to the prospective team that he's going to work with. And we have someone who focuses on astrophysics, molecular chemistry, genetics, and Peter is introduced as the biochemistry expert. And so that may be his major.
It may be biochem.
Maybe.
But it's not explicitly stated. Like he could have been like a pre-law major, but just but just took a lot of electives.
Well, we know he's a science major.
Well, okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah, but my sister is considered a science major, and she majored in film. So really,
The science of photography. Also, the other member, which we like awkwardly get separately introduced to, is the quantum mechanics expert, who is a girl in a wheelchair. So that's cool. But then the Scorpion blasts through the wall and is looking
Wait, are you
for
saying that
someone in
she's
the room.
cool or that wheelchairs are cool?
All of the above.
Okay.
Scorpion is looking for someone in the room and has some kind of tracking software. Obviously, it's Peter Parker for some reason. But Spider-Man swings through again. And this is finally a moment where they're in the same room and Pete's like, what the fuck is going on? But this Spider-Man is just terrible and gets beat up again. And then Peter Parker saves the day by using the Kirby 2000 generator to hook up to Scorpion and knock him out.
Great,
Which, I don't know, it's kind of cool.
I guess.
I mean, it doesn't really fit that a ton. It's a Spider-Man book.
Yeah.
But John Byrne, very big fan of Jack Kirby. And then Peter Parker is like, hey, Spider-Man, who the fuck are you under that mask? And it's like, why would he even bother answering that? Like, he would never answer that question.
No.
It's just a really dumb moment.
And then Pete gets the job at this lab. So what I'm thinking is that Dan Slott read this issue,
Yep.
right? Like, it seems like things that Slott brought up throughout his run all happened back in the 90s, but no one cared.
Yeah. It's definitely like he pulled all the elements from the eras that people forgot about.
Yeah.
But also, Nick Spencer did a copycat Spider-Man thing, but did it better than this.
Well, that's all. I mean, we don't know how this resolves yet, spoiler alert, but yeah.
This is the part where Vince tells us what happened.
Well, at the end.
He will at the end. I'm very excited for that.
But the issue ends with him hugging his aunt like he's a little fucking kid. I'm just kidding. But
well, that's because Ant-Man still thinks that Peter's like 4 years old in this series for some reason.
We have a backup here, and the first backup is someone upgrading Mac Gargan and like taunting him, and there's some weird like mind shenanigans going on. Who really cares? The creative team here is Howard Mackey, just like the full issue, and the artist is Raphael Kianan, who we've seen before and commented on before. And it's not that spectacular, but there's one panel. It's the very first panel of this issue where it's like Mac Gargan like submerged in like this weird technology thing that's all hooked up to him. And there's a ton of detail, and it's like one really cool panel. And the rest of the story looks like just totally generic, like B-level 90s Spider-Man. And then we have another backup, which is John Byrne writing, drawing, and inking himself. And it's Peter Parker destroying evidence from when he researched his powers. And the big deal here is that it's the first clue that something is wrong in this relaunch, because it is mentioned that the spider bit him when Otto Octavius had a demonstration go wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't read this before now. I'm looking at it right now. And there's a panel of Pete lying in rubble while the spider bites him. Vince, what is happening?
Yeah.
This is Spider-Man Chapter 1.
Oh my god.
The John Byrne written and drawn 12, technically 13, because between issues 6 and 7, Marvel released the Zero issue, which was not planned ahead of time, but allegedly the book was selling well enough that Marvel just squeezed the 13th issue in the middle. So this 13-issue series, all from John Byrne, making weird, tiny, convenient retcons to Spider-Man's origin. And it was I didn't know it was actually released. The entire series was released before this relaunch, or maybe it finished like at exactly the same time. But I thought it was like a year after or something. I thought maybe Byrne did it on the side, or once he was done his run here. And so that was basically the official Spider-Man origin from sort of like 1999 to when they just stopped referring to it, which didn't take that long. It was just a few years later. But the idea is for some reason he wanted to tie Otto and Peter closer together, and so they both get their powers at the same exact time.
I hate it.
Yep. But also at the end of this backup, it's not actually clear what the hell Peter Parker does with this stash of his research, because he just like has it in a bundle and like jumps out the window. Like I was waiting for the scene, like the one panel where he burns it or he buries it, but he just took it out of the attic. We have no idea what he did. Or I was waiting for the scene where like similar to like burying it, I was waiting for the scene where he like just hides it even more.
Also, I'm pretty sure this image of Pete in the last panel is the exact same image from when he was talking to Aunt May in the kitchen earlier, but with a different colored shirt.
Jeez. So now we have the other half of the relaunch, because as you remember in the final chapter, well, actually, the final chapter was only 3 Spider-Man titles, but the Gathering of 5, and before that, for most of the Clone Saga, we always had 4 Spider-Man titles. Of course, Spider-Man started out with Amazing Spider-Man, and then the second Spider-Man title was Marvel Team Up, and then the third Spider-Man title was Spectacular Spider-Man, and then Web of Spider-Man replaced Marvel Team Up, and then Adjectiveless Spider-Man, launched by Todd McFarlane, became the 4th title. And then during the Clone Saga, toward the end, Web of Spider-Man was retired and replaced by Sensational. And so you had 4 ongoing Spider-Man titles, plus the quarterly Unlimited, plus whatever, like 3 miniseries a year that they're working on. So, and with this 1999 relaunch, they're like, let's slim it the hell down. 2 ongoing Spider-Man titles. But also we'll do a few spin-offs. Like Spider-Girl is a title at this point, and we'll get to another title in a second. And so we have Amazing Spider-Man and Peter Parker Spider-Man. The creative team here, it's also written by Howard Mackey. So Howard Mackey is basically just in charge of the entire line at this point. And the artist here is John Romita Jr. And I like this cover. It's not like something really, really impressive. But
I've seen a poster out of this cover though before. It's one of the more notable ones.
It's just Spidey like on his like stomach on top of a web with some buildings underneath him. And it's
I'm
just
not a fan of the jagged font for the title. I know that's kind of iconic now, but I've never really liked it.
I think it's more nostalgic. I don't think really iconic. I firmly associate this point with 90s Spider-Man.
Yes.
Because that's the font the cartoon used. But like after reading a lot of comics with this font on it, to me it's now just a universal like, oh, don't touch that. I much prefer the original wordmark logo. Same goes with like Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
A lot of the original Marvel word marks are great. Don't change them.
Actually, I don't think this is the same Amazing Spider-Man logo that I'm referring to, but one of the things here's a footnote for you all. Literally on like the 4th episode of the show, what I should have pointed out was we actually read the 2 issues where the logo on Amazing Spider-Man changes, and I think it's the arc after the very first Clone Saga arc, Power and Responsibility, whatever that next one is. I think it's called Players and Pawns or something.
Yeah.
So if you're watching, go look up Amazing Spider-Man like 393 and 394 or thereabouts. And so the story here is called Power Without Responsibility, which I feel like was that title used in the Spencer run? Like he definitely used that kind of.
It was something like that.
So we open with some dumb like armored goons, the agents of anarchy, breaking out the Ranger, who has a totally awful, boring name and very unclear powers, as we will get to. Spidey shows up to stop them with Peter snapping photos, and he gets some decent shots, I assume. He gets a real close-up on Spidey's face, which that would be a nice like front page shot or something like that. But the bad guy gets away, and Spidey runs away. So this Spider-Man is just very ineffectual. Then Betty Brant shows up to save Pete from the cops, and I like seeing Betty. Like I feel like I'm not as familiar with Betty, just in general across my Spider-Man knowledge. And towards the end of the Clone Saga, and then in this, like she's had a few moments in between where I really like her characterization. And we've seen even like a tiny bit of an arc for her because like at the very end of the Clone Saga, I think that's actually where she was like becoming more of a legit reporter, even though I think she may have already been one, and they were just recycling that.
Yeah.
And then Betty, again, keeping with it, gets into a giant argument with Jonah about journalistic integrity. And Jonah, again, just it's too over the top for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bad.
And we get introduced to Senator Stuart Ward. And I was trying to figure out if there's some connection with the last name, like Meacham Ward and everything like that, but I think there's no connection at all. Just coincidence. I guess he's running for president. I don't even think it's like said.
I think it's like it's a thing like he could be, like he's gaining popularity. He could be the next president.
Yeah, he's a popular political figure. But when no one else is around, he's haunted by some kind of bullshit because maybe he was involved in something and we don't really get any resolution in our reading. Then Pete he has a pager. He gets a page from Aunt May. And so, of course, since she's an old, feeble woman who already died, he thinks she might not be okay. So he runs home, and there's just this awkward dialogue where she's like, "Oh, I'm old. I don't understand inventions."
Who thought this was going to be fun to read? Who thought, yeah, let's bring Aunt May back and have her not understand how pagers work and give Pete a heart attack. People are going to love this. Whatever.
But I don't even understand this because it's almost like at first it's played off like she like sort of butt dialed him in a sense because she's like, I don't understand how this works. It was not a big deal. It was an accident or something like that. But she actually has news. MJ is coming home early. And again, she's overseas, so she's taking an early flight. And I'll get more into this in a second. But I thought this was going to be more of a major moment than it was.
Yep.
But no, MJ is totally fine. But she was on the plane with Ward, Senator Ward, and Ranger, the guy who we saw earlier, is the dumb haunting Electro guy, I guess. And then Spidey finally shows up, like someone in the Spider-Man costume finally shows up pretty late into this issue. And which Romita gets to draw Spider-Man, and he does a few like multi-page panels, and it's kind of cool. Some half decent action considering this awful villain.
Yeah.
But
fine.
this Spidey totally fails again, which leaves Pete in his civvies to save the day. But I thought this was funny. It's like a dumb comic book funny. But Pete saves the day, and all the cameras instead are focusing on MJ because she's this giant, like huge supermodel. And that's the end of that issue. Peter Parker, Spider-Man #1.
Well, and then here's the thing, though, just real quick. Spider-Man, whoever's in the costume, pulls a Barry Allen and beats the crap out of this guy because he was embarrassed. So, who is this? Because that wasn't Barry. This clearly isn't. I mean, obviously not Peter Parker, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So I'll just spoil it here. This Spider-Man turns out to be Maddie Franklin, the dumb teenage girl who just randomly showed up in the Gathering of Five. I'm not sure how this works because I was talking about spin-offs and stuff. Eventually, John Byrne, he either leaves this title or does double duty because there is a spin-off Spider-Woman title because Maddie Franklin becomes the third Spider-Woman when Peter Parker is like, no, give me my costume back, even though just rip off my costume but cut off the sleeves. And like when she's drawn as Spider-Woman, even though she is a teenager, like she totally has breasts in her costume.
Right.
And so I'm not sure like how this works.
Tape.
Yeah, I mean I think she's wearing like a binder or something.
Yeah.
Like transgender men would wear. Like that's my headcanon is that Maddie Franklin like just wraps herself in like something or puts on a corset before getting in the Spider-Man costume. And maybe that can be her excuse for why she's so fucking terrible. And that Spider-Woman title, I don't know. I mean, it was probably awful. I don't know that it was necessarily awful, but apparently no one liked it at all, and it didn't sell well at all. And so I think it lasted like 7 issues or so, and it eventually crossed back over into Spider-Man.
Also, everyone heard it here first. Women can't be good Spider-Man because their big old boobs get in the way.
Yep.
Vince with the hot takes.
And the other thing is I was talking about the plane. Eventually, a few issues into this, and we actually will reference this in a second. MJ is taking a plane to a modeling gig or something, and the plane is believed to have crashed and everyone dies. And then for like a long time, Peter Parker's characterization is, I'm a conspiracy theorist. The plane didn't crash and my wife is not dead. And so he just looks like this pitiful, like sad idiot. And then of course the plane didn't crash. And then way later, that was just their way to get her off the board. But of course, once she finally returns, they're still married. And that eventually, when she comes back into the fold, it goes into the JMS run. And they're like, well, we really got to figure out how to fuck it up and get what we want. And that gets to One More Day eventually. But also in Peter Parker, we have some backup stuff. First, we have a backup sketchbook with some sketches from John Romita Jr. And they're dumb fluff descriptions. I like read a few of them, and there's absolutely nothing of value or interesting in them. But they claim that these sketches were used as the style guides for people drawing the Spider-Man characters. But it's like, again, there are only 2 Spider-Man books at this point, and one of them is drawn by the guy doing this sketchbook. The other one is drawn by John Byrne, who doesn't care about your style guide probably, and also is in charge of the whole line. So it's like I don't know why you really need a style guide and need to like advertise that.
That style guide was used to communicate with a long lunch.
Yeah. And there's another weird page. In addition to the sketches, there are screenshots of how John Byrne designed the Parker's penthouse apartment in some kind of 3D software. And in the like tiny resolution on the page, it almost looks like they're photographs. And so I was wondering if John Byrne broke into someone's apartment and just took photos.
I wish he did.
And it's weird that the sketchbook is first because then we have an actual story backup. So if I was like a teenager and flipping through this book, I may have missed this part because I see the sketch park book part and I put down the comic because I don't give a fuck. So this backup story, it's Howard Mackey and drawn by Andy Smith. We have a young Peter Parker. He goes to buy ice cream, which he will enjoy later with Uncle Ben and Aunt May. But then there's a blackout. But Uncle Ben has a shitty dollar store flashlight, which makes all the kids run over and be like, hey, help us, even though they were bullying his nephew a second ago. And it's like kind of cute.
It's
for like
kind of terrible.
For like a shitty like 8-page story. I don't think it was awful. I mean, I like the concept. And then it ends with a framing device, which it didn't start with, but it ends in the present with MJ, Peter, and Aunt May sitting on the couch in front of a fire, and like maybe there was a blackout as well in the present, and that's why this story came up.
Said that there was a snowstorm that had a blackout.
And like, is Aunt May making sexual innuendos here and telling Pete to go fuck MJ?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, that's what I picked up. But you could also pick it up as like her suggesting a 3-way, which is weird.
And like we said, because trouble does exist.
Well, yeah, and Peter Parker, Matt, confirm again. I've asked this before. Peter Parker, not blood related to May Riley.
That's correct.
Yes. And then the other part of really my major thought in this issue, besides the sexual innuendos, is or in this backup, is Uncle Ben. It's Pete's like, oh, I talked to Uncle Ben about whatever, and he mentions baseball. And Spider-Man is like low-key a baseball fan, and it's not brought up a ton in the comics usually. But this made me think, because he's such a nerd and is also into baseball, do you think Peter Parker plays like fantasy sports at all?
The majority of people play fantasy sports now, but here's the thing though, I don't see him playing fantasy baseball because that's like the super hardcore one, and that one's just, I tried playing fantasy baseball for like a week and I was like, fuck this. The one everyone plays is fantasy football.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. I'm not sure how his like amateur sports fan intersect with his super nerd.
Well, we do know that him and Uncle Ben would go to a Mets game every summer.
Yeah. Also, I just kind of took the note at the end of my notes, but somewhere, it may have even been in the first issue, Peter Parker does joke about clones.
Yes.
For a quick second, he questions whether this Spider-Man is a clone, but he's like, I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
And now we have our third little chunk of this episode. We have Amazing Spider-Man Annual 2000. And I like this cover a lot.
Me too.
It's reminiscent of the Clone Saga. But then it's funny when you in the story you realize what the hell the cover actually represents.
Yeah.
So Howard Mackey writing, as fucking always in this era. And the art here is by Klaus Janson. And for the most part, I don't think it looks very good. And some of that is the coloring. There's a lot of weird coloring in this issue.
It doesn't even look like Klaus Janson art. That's the thing. It looks like someone else drew this, but they put his name on
it. And so the Scryer goons, they want Normie Osborn. But Peter breaks through the window of the Osborn family home to stop them. And I think it's funny where he's like, I don't really want to do this property damage and break their window, but those kinds of things don't confine me, so I'm going to break this window so I can potentially save someone. And Normie is a little stupid shit. He thinks Spidey killed his dad. And he basically plays like voodoo type shit with Spider-Man action figures, and I guess like beats them up with other action figures or his hands or something. It's like some Toy Story 2 shit.
Wouldn't it be Toy Story 1?
I thought that was in the second movie.
No, it's in the first one.
Okay. And then we get introduced to this character. We don't even we never get his actual name. He's jokingly referred to as Scryer Jr., but that's not his name.
He looks like that one Mortal Kombat character.
Yeah, I'm not certain who you're referring to, but he reminds me a little bit of like a very, very shitty like Bloodshot or Rai from Valiant.
I think the character he's referring to is named Quan Chi. But
Yes,
let me.
that's who it is.
Yep, it is.
He has gray skin and a dumb red emblem thing on his chest, and also a lot of earrings.
A lot
And
of
a
rings
lip
in
ring.
general. He has rings on his shoulders. He's like shoulder piercings.
Yeah, they also kind of changed like the Scryer costume because they now have like this weird like gold bar like highlight on their robes. But
They're just thugs with the fucking yellow stripes on their sides. Like they just are wearing ski masks. I was really confused when he recognized them as scryers because they don't look like scryers.
yeah, but Scryer Jr. is able to kidnap Normie. Well, really, the dumb kid just goes with him. And then things get really weird because Pete thinks he sees Harry Osborn on top of a bridge, which cues a quick flashback. And again, Matt, Peter Parker refers to them. Well, he doesn't actually use like an adjective, but he says that they were friends in high school.
Yeah, they weren't. That's not correct.
And we get a quick reference here about how MJ has disappeared, as I was talking about before. And Pete, maybe he's hallucinating and seeing Harry. And then we have this creepy scene again of Normie, like he's like cutting off the heads of like dozens of Spider-Man action figures, which is just hilarious because like this, like it's not like he packed up his bags. The Scryer Jr. just gave him like this box of Spider-Man action figures.
Imagine this guy running down to like Toys R Us or something and buying all those Spider-Man action figures.
There's a quick Buffy reference in here. And it turns out that Harry Osborn is a ghost of some sort. Because I don't even remember, like the Scryers like developed some kind of program using every single document or detail from Harry Osborn's life, which created an AI.
Yeah, he's an e-ghost.
But Spidey wins the day. He beats up Scryer Jr. Ghost Harry tells Normie how shitty his family actually is and that he needs to look up to Spider-Man and not his drug addict, dead villain father or his insane, dead, not dead villain grandfather. And then the ghost Harry just disappears, and it's never said why he has to. Like I don't think there's any plot element where it's like I'm running out of battery or I'm getting corrupted. He just like walks off. But is he like dissipating himself?
Yeah, I think he does. He
Is there a Harry ghost somewhere out in the world somewhere still?
Well, Slot didn't bring him back, so he must not exist anymore.
Then Scryer Jr. gets up at the last second, tries to kill the kid instead, but is choked out by someone in the shadows. And I was waiting for like the 2-page epilogue where it's like, oh, here's this stupid thing that happened. But I don't really get this issue. And I don't think there's any point to yet.
I think it's interesting that Harry tells Pete to keep an eye on Normie, and he promptly never does that at any point.
Because Peter Parker is an asshole.
I'm trying to think, like, does Normie show up in JMS much?
Not that from what I've read of it.
Not that I'm aware of.
I can't think when Normie like next major appears. Maybe not until Brand New Day.
It might not be.
But like I don't. Who's choking here? Is it Ghost Harry somehow, even though he was intangible before? Is it Norman in the shadows?
I thought it was Norman.
I thought it was Norman, but then I thought we were going to get a panel showing Norman like at his desk.
And there's just nothing.
It's supposed to be this weird mystery, but like it's not interesting at all.
Right.
And then there's a quick backup, which we didn't have to read, but I'll just quickly note what it is. It's Gregory Wright and Andy Kuhn doing a Sandman story with Silver Sable and Wild Pack showing up. And this is after Sandman has gone rogue and become a villain again, after sort of being on the Avengers and then being part of the Wild Pack with Silver Sable. And Gregory Wright wrote Silver Sable and the Wild Pack, and that was canceled like years ago at this point. So I have no idea why this story is here. It's just like dragging out this plot point that most fans hated anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And that concludes our peek into the next chapter. There are weird stuff. What we are not reading is lots of weird stuff. As I've mentioned, a lot of the Maddie Franklin stuff and what happens with Mary Jane. Very briefly in these issues, we see Jill Stacy, and Jill Stacy like kind of develops an awkward relationship with Peter Parker in MJ's absence. There is an arc in here which makes Venom basically more of a villain again. Eddie Brock, that is. Before, shortly thereafter, there's the really weird Venom run by Daniel Way, which kind of just gets the symbiote up in the air again, which makes this one kind of pointless. Here's an issue, Peter Parker #4, guest starring Marrow of the X-Men.
Okay.
And, there is one really interesting arc in the next chapter where Flash Thompson, I think he's in like a coma or something, and you go into his like dream world where he's a superhero, and like Peter Parker is like his biggest fan. It's very strange, but it's sort of worth reading just to like analyze what the hell it might say about Flash Thompson's character, and especially in light of how he would further evolve with like Agent Venom and everything like that. But I've always found that arc strange. And there's some other stuff kind of off in the corner with some of the like Hobgoblin stuff and stuff that's not as connected. And then Spider-Man books slowly kind of get good again. But that's the next chapter. The Mackie run is basically issue 1 through like 30. 1 through 29 on Amazing. And I think it's only like 1 through 19 on Peter Parker.
Okay.
Not the best era. Don't read it.
I'm not going to.
So that concludes this episode. Do you guys have any final thoughts on whatever the hell we talked about?
Is next episode Spider Girl, or is it like, because that's our running gag right now? Is next episode Spider Girl? It's not.
Yeah.
I've been saying that for months.
Next
I think
episode.
this episode makes it exactly a month.
Is next episode Spider Girl?
I'm double checking.
Okay. I think it is, right? I think it should
We
be.
keep saying this.
I hold by what I said before, that Mayday's fucking dumb, but anything is better than this. So
I mean, we'll see. I like Mayday all right.
I believe that you do, but I don't think you should.
All right, well, that's fair, I guess. We'll see. We'll see next episode.
It's scrolling slowly. This is the high quality content. Okay, next episode is Legacy in Black and White. We're checking in on May Day. We're going to read an issue of What If, and then an issue of her series. And I may double check and add some other stuff, see which issues are the most Clone Saga relevant.
Okay.
But currently, it'll be basically her origin / introduction, and then a reminiscence on Ben Reilly, her uncle.
My boy.
And the story name of that issue is called Cry Uncle.
Of course it is.
And then maybe we'll actually get some other people on the show because we will get into the Ultimate Clone Saga.
The Ultimate Clone Saga, you say?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he comes through. I am not expecting him to actually be on the show.
I'll
Well-
have you know that when I said that, Mikey turned around very excited. So
All right.
You mean
Well,
From the hit show on this channel, the Cowcast?
yes, Mikey Shume from the hit show The Calcast.
All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and tune in next time for Spider-Girl. We're serious this time.
Until Vince adds another episode.